Morning everyone, JJ here, going back through some of my most influential albums, artists, bands, things like that. Boring topics. But my wife is tired of hearing the story, so I'm here to tell you instead. This album was part of a collection that I inherited that I've been dragging with me for 30 years now. You can see my records. There's a lot of them there on the wall, some in storage. But somewhere around, I don't know, 50 or 60, something like that, of those records, I've basically been hauling around with me for 30 years now, over 30 years. And for a lot of that time, I didn't have a working turntable, so I was literally just storing them and keeping them holding on to them for a rainy day. Luckily, I have a turntable now, and so I get to imbibe and listen to all these. So I've been going back through a lot of my favorites and talking about my favorite drummers and my favorite albums. This band and this drummer are both of those things. This album, when it came out, the band was extremely controversial. It's one of those things where it's just like, it was the 80s and, should kids listen to these things? I don't know. I was a kid and I listened to it. I had older siblings who had it, and that's where I inherited this copy from. And, the older siblings are really, really great for exposing you to things that you probably shouldn't see at the wrong age. But anyways, in hindsight, the record's not nearly as controversial as it was made out to be at the time. But, at the time this came out, this band was, the most dangerous band in rock and roll. And, the reputation kind of preceded them for that. And so the band is Motley Crue, and the album is Shout at the Devil, or Shout with the Devil, whatever. There's some weird story about how they changed the name of the album anyways, but yeah, so now it's Shout at the Devil. So, you're not singing along with him and he's not your buddy, you're shouting at him. Anyways, this album, I remember very, very early on, this album was released in 1983. So I was very, very young, and I can remember very early musical memories of mine from when I was, 4 years old, 5 years old, just these little moments. And I know one of the memories that I have is singing Shout at the Devil, and not knowing what it meant or anything. It was so catchy, and it caught my young toddler-sized ear, and is one of those things. And so this album has just been like in the wheelhouse of my reference and listening and stuff like that since that time. And to say its influence on me is large, it's kind of an understatement. I reference it quite often. The drumming styles and the sound and stuff like that. It's just this album is kind of production-wise, it's kind of what I really like. As far as my own projects and things like that go, like the aesthetic of this, like there's like I don't know how the band feels about the recording, but there's like this authenticity and this like punk kind of influence to it, and like they have the hard rock sound and the attitude, and the guitars are amazing sounding, and the drums are not as produced as some of the later Motley Crue stuff, but they're still great. And I'm gonna do a whole other video on Tommy Lee, because Tommy Lee is one of my biggest drum influences of all time, and I can talk more about him at length. But this album in particular, this is the first exposure to Motley Crue that I got. And so the amazing part about this is, this is the actual copy. And so I was looking at this and just like blown away at these guys. I had never seen a band that looked like this before. And to tell you the truth, I likely kind of was like scared. These guys like whatever you think of it now, it's silly, if it's over the top, whatever. This was kind of like the flames and the image and the leather. These guys were presenting one of the most iconic kind of packages for a band I think I'd ever seen. This era of Motley Crue was relatively short-lived because you get into the next record, Theater of Pain is after this, and then you're in the midst of like, Pink, and it's a whole other animal after this. So this is the last kind of hurrah of Motley Crue as this kind of like street gang, these punks that are just like, like these guys look dangerous. They probably were too. I know they're wild enough, but like so compelling to see this as a young musician. This and the size of this, like just unbelievable. I was just enamored by looking at this. And, the influences these guys took, like it was clearly, your Judas Priest and Kiss. Kiss had Destroyer and, like the leather and all that stuff, and famously on their album cover. And these guys just took all that up a notch. And also they weren't afraid to have like their glam rock influences, like T-Rex, Mark Bolan, like this kind of thing with the makeup and stuff like that. Like these guys just ushered in such a amazing, like Mad Max meets, I don't even know. It's just so unique and it's so cool, and it was so ahead of its time. And one thing, it's one thing to have the image and stuff like that, but Motley Crue, famously Motley Crue is Nikki Sixx's brainchild, and he's obviously you find out later on when in the band's trajectory that he is the leader de facto of Motley Crue and the main songwriter and all that kind of stuff. And so it's like the songs that are on this, some of the earliest songs I ever learned on drums after I towards the end of the 80s when I discovered Metallica and think of drums, I start listening back to this, and the knack for drumming had always kind of been there, and at least in the back of my mind, because once I learned the mechanics of drumming, all these songs came very, very naturally and very fast for me to learn. I had already listened to them so much; they were 100% embedded into my long-term memory already. So once I got the mechanics of drumming down, these songs came to me quite easily. The first song I ever actually physically played on a drum set is the cover version of Helter Skelter that's on this record, the Beatles tune. Very first song I ever played on drums, and that was a crazy cool feeling. It's that was nerve-wracking to say the least, and I performed it in front of people as well. It wasn't just in my room or anything. So that was very cool. It's a cool memory I just kind of remembered just now. So Shout at the Devil, the single off of this, there was something really kind of like captivating too, like about the, being young and, being kind of like attracted to fringe things or maybe like dangerous ideas. And these guys had that in spades. Shout at the Devil, Looks That Kill. I just did a cover of Looks That Kill. Hopefully it should be out by the time this is out, but that's just one of my favorite songs. Bastard is an amazing song. This song has there's almost not a bad song on this. I can't remember, one song doesn't come to mind right away, the song Danger. It might even be an interlude, I can't remember honestly. There's better songs than others on here, but Bastard, amazing. Knock 'Em Dead Kid. This is like, the Motley Crue at like kind of the height of them being the Crue sort of thing. You don't have the ballads on here. Too Young to Fall in Love, I guess, is an amazing song. I guess if you're going to get into a ballad, that's as close as you get it on this record, but it still has this really awesome kind of like a hard rock vibe to it. And the music video is like a perfect companion to this album as well. Like the flames and the back streets, alleyways, like these guys were just, I know for a fact that they were living that life too. So the authenticity that's behind this is what makes it so appealing as well. These guys were not faking that lifestyle. they were dirtbags. And proudly so, because they don't even try to deny it or hide it or anything like that. If you've read, The Dirt or seen the movie or anything like that, it's very apparent these guys were living that life. And that gives this album all the credentials that it needs. Too Young to Fall in Love, amazing song. Helter Skelter, I mentioned, it's a Beatles cover. When it came to early developing double bass, one of my favorite drummers, David Silveria from Korn, he mentioned in an article I read with him that when he was learning, Tommy Lee was one of his favorite drummers growing up, and mine as well. And David took the influence to learn double bass from the song Red Hot. And before I had read that with David, that's the same thing I did. One of the very first songs I started picking up on double bass. There was always been some songs I listened to that had little triplet patterns or little things of double bass, but to actually have a sustained double bass pattern, I hadn't really picked up one until I heard the song Red Hot. And any drummers, if you're looking to practice double bass, that's a great song to try it to, because the tempo is challenging. And the double bass pattern kind of sustains throughout the whole song, so it's an endurance exercise at the same time. So that song, it's got a shuffly kind of feel to it, and it's an amazing song to practice along to, and it's a great song too. I was doing it in a cover band, and it always went over pretty well. It's got such a great tempo to it, and a great chorus and all that kind of stuff. 10 Seconds to Love, another one. But the influence this record has too. It's not, I listened to it much before I ever had any musings to, become a musician or even play drums. This is one of the records I can just put on, and there was a time when I enjoyed this only as a listener. So I am able to still kind of put it on and not put on my, not looked at it through a magnifying glass and pick it apart and all these kinds of things. I can still enjoy it. Careful though. I just noticed it does contain backwards messages, so you have to be careful listening to this version, because how are you going to listen to backwards messages on a streaming version? Anyways, just saw that on the note there I was looking through. Getting back to the sound of this album, this is it's not, it's a very raw production. It's Motley Crue kind of in their least refined form. Not as much as Too Fast for Love, but it's definitely of the same ilk. Tom Werman is the producer of this, and Tom Werman has been doing a lot of interviews lately talking about a lot of the hard rock bands that he worked with. He's kind of like the Phil Spector of a lot of these kind of 80s LA Sunset Strip bands, and so he's got a lot of insight into the making of this, and interviews with him have been really cool to kind of look back, listen to, and then look back and see that this era of the band. And as far as the rest of the band goes, Tommy Lee, obviously I'll do another video about him. The guy's one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. I think he's the John Bonham of the 1980s. It might be controversial, but it's my opinion, so it's okay. Mick Mars, underrated guitar player, just phenomenal guitar player. There's a lot of examples on this, but it's like a song like Dr. Feelgood and Kickstart My Heart is real showcases for his ability as a player. Without You, like the melodic phrasings, and amazing guitar player. And to say something about Nikki Sixx as a songwriter, you can say all the same things about him. Hugely underrated songwriter. He's whatever. He's an asshole. I don't think it's any secret. A lot of people think that about him. I don't know him personally, but he is. He wears it on his sleeve sometimes, and that's okay. I don't want my rock stars to always be nice guys and shaking hands and kissing babies and all that stuff. That's not what I even want Motley Crue to be anyways, so I'm okay with that. Say what you want about Vince Neil, this is a super compelling image. If you're gonna put four guys together, who the lead singer is. Come on, clearly, you don't even need to question it. It's him. It's the blonde guy. And But you know, say what you want about Vince. It's like he if he's not here, it's like you don't have uh, the same trajectory to the band. You just don't. Like he needs to be there, you know, and that was clearly demonstrated. One of my favorite eras of Motley Crue is the '94 era when they have John Corabi in the band. I think that is an amazing album, one of their best, in fact. And it's so hated just because of the fact that Vince Neil's not there. And you know, at this time he was still, you know, he was screechy, but he was singing, and you know the songs are there, and you know that kind of went away after time, and it was really the live show that kind of was Vince's big downfall. I opened a show once for Vince Neil's band, and it was like, yeah, it's I don't know, it's bad. There's no better way to put it. It's just sometimes he works on it for a while, and sometimes it's just he's calling it in. Like, you know, it is what it is. But the fans clearly made it known to Motley Crue that without Vince Neil, Motley Crue doesn't work in the same way. So you know it is what it is. And you know, Motley Crue is still playing these days, and but it's become a different entity than what I really like, which is, you know, four dirty street punks who might steal your grandma's purse in real life. And you know, this is my Motley Crue, and the name is you know, very, very appropriate for them. They definitely were that, and you know, these guys came together and they put this thing out, and you know, they put out some great records after this too, but this one has a special place for me. The time I heard it, the age that I was, you know, all those kinds of things mixed together. So when I put this album on, this is a nice stroll down memory lane, and sometimes I share it with like family and stuff like that. And weirdly enough, what a weird album to have family memories associated with, but that's how it was in the 80s, you know? It was, yeah, some strange times. But anyways, this is the one about Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. If you haven't listened to this, I mean, pick any song on here. I would love you to listen to Red Hot or Too Young to Fall in Love. Those are two great songs in my opinion. So yeah, Shout at the Devil, Motley Crue. Check it out if you haven't. Cheers.